So, I don't know if people have noticed, but everyone is busy all of the time. Have you noticed that? So there's a lot that we can choose to do. And this morning you chose to come to a conference. Isn't that great? Or maybe your manager signed you up against your will and you had to come here, but either way you're here and we're all here and that's really great. So my first question is though, how much are you here? I find on the first day of a conference, I'm often sort of still mentally somewhere else. Like I've got some work thing loaded up in my brain, or even on my laptop in front of me, and I'm kind of still working in the background on that thing while I'm at a conference. Do people feel like they're kind of doing that? Have you disconnected? It's hard to disconnect. It's hard to let go. Try to let go if you can. I think it's difficult for a lot of us, especially in the middle of the week, to step away from whatever we're creating or whatever we're debugging or whatever side hustle we're side hustling, and just do something completely else for a couple of days. Disconnecting feels really weird. It feels unproductive. But this is a talk about being deliberate and about how sometimes you have to slow down a bit so you can go faster in the long run. I think it's weird in our industry to say slow down. Like, we're all about going fast. We're all, woo, agile, biased towards action, move fast. We call things names like swift and velocity and speedy. We put our rubies onto Rails. In the time that I've been standing here, 3 JavaScript frameworks have been born, lived full, beautiful lives, and faded into obscurity. And this is the continuous life cycle. It's like, if you don't think you're at the continuous life cycle, you're at the wrong room. But we're all about moving. We're continuously going. And to be clear, that's good. According to the State of DevOps report, which I recommend you read, it says high-performing teams do move quickly. It said that the highest performing companies deploy 46 times as often as the lowest performing. They can push in under an hour and they can roll back faster than that. So there's a ton of advantage and flexibility in being able to move fast. You know, you can react to whatever your customers want. You can take small risks and roll something out, secure in the knowledge that you can very quickly recover if there's a problem. Going fast is great, so long as you're going fast in a direction that's useful. But it's possible to go fast in the wrong direction. And if you go fast in the wrong direction, it just makes you get to a wronger place faster. As Peter Drucker famously said, there's nothing as useless as doing efficiently that which shouldn't be done at all. Sometimes we need to slow down and think really hard about where we're going and what we want to do on the way. We want to like step outside the continuous and do things in a less obvious way so that we go faster and better in the long run. Okay, the bio slide. Hello, my name is Tanya. I'm a principal software engineer at Squarespace in New York. We also have offices in Portland and Dublin. Is anyone visiting from Dublin? It's like, woo, Irish people. Yes. Hi. If you're in Dublin, we have a semi-regular SRE meetup. If you're interested in presenting at that, talk to this beardy guy in the 4th row. I'm Where's Tanya on Twitter and GitHub, and I blog about tech and organizational stuff at noidea.dog, which is, of course, a Squarespace site. And I really love going places on trains. The last time I was here in London, for example, I was actually on my way from Dublin to Glasgow, which, if you don't really have a good mental model of the distances, well, how do I describe the slide? Dublin to Glasgow is not very far. Dublin to London is a little further. London to Glasgow is quite far. But I flew into Heathrow. I had a bit of extra time, so I went to see the Magna Carta at the British Library for a bit, and then I got on the Caledonian Sleeper, which is a lovely train, and I really recommend it. Now, you might point out that this is a direct flight from Dublin to London, or Dublin to Glasgow, and it's shorter than the flight from Dublin to London. So a reasonable question here would be, why? And the answer is obviously because trains. I do this a lot. I go somewhere that's out of my way, that's not where I plan to go, so that I can take a train to somewhere else. I love being on trains because I love how it forces me outside my regular life. I can't do the day-to-day things. I have to do something else. But it's not downtime at all, because on trains I'm more productive. I write better, I code better. I can think thoughts on trains that I just wouldn't have had otherwise, because I'm forced to slow down. Going to Glasgow via London took longer, for sure, but I got where I needed to go by the time I needed to be there. And I got more done on the way, and I got to see the Magna Carta, which was pretty cool. Okay, why trains? A lot of the talks for the next 2 days are going to be about how to go fast. And again, that is great, and you should do it. But this talk is going to do the opposite. We're going to look at some things we can only do if we slow down. Like just a little. We're going to think outside the continuous and outside the quickest way to get somewhere. We're going to maybe introspect, just a little. The talk's not going to take the most direct route either. We're going to wander a bit, we'll take some diversions, but we will still get where we're going by 10:45, and hopefully see some interesting things along the way. Here's the rail map for where we're going to go today. We're going to start out by figuring out where we're even going. Like, where do we want to be? What do we want out of work? How do we think about this? And then we're going to get distracted by something shiny, which will seem to get us closer to our goal, but ultimately slow us down. Then we're going to stop and look at a few things that we can only do if we take a little longer to get where we're going, like little station stops along the way they slow us down in the moment, but ultimately make us faster and happier. And then we're going to get very briefly existential. It's going to be alarming, but we're all going to get through it together. And then we'll finally arrive at a destination, which we will choose in a moment when we ask, where do we want to go? Like, what are we all doing? So I work in infrastructure. And actually, what is our kind of tech demographics here? Who's kind of infrastructure people? Like, that's what, half? Who is like making some sort of a product? Less? Like, I don't know, is that a quarter? I don't know how to estimate. What is everyone else doing? Consultancy, cool, okay. I have no idea how consultants decide what to do. That sounds very complicated. But for infrastructure, I am jealous of my friends in product-type organizations because I think this is how that goes. I think it's well covered. I think product managers say, we should make this thing. And then everyone works together to make the thing. And then later the thing launches, and there's a party with ice cream. Like, if it doesn't work exactly like that, don't spoil my illusions, but this is how I think product engineering kind of organizations work. And I'm jealous of it, because in infrastructure, it's more like, just make everything better. And how do you know when that's done? Like, we don't really have product management in infrastructure, or like in release engineering, or other organizations that are mostly facing internal customers. I think that is a huge loss. If anybody is an infrastructure person who uses product management, like a product management function, I would love to talk with you. Come tell me about it in the break. Oh, there's someone. Can you please come tell me about that in the break? Because I think it would be cool. But our infrastructure goals are much more often like, just continually make everything better. Or actually more often phrased as, continually make everything less bad. Which is, it's hard to feel like you ever get to the point where you can have a party. In the absence of product management, I think it's worth figuring this out for ourselves. Like, where do we want to go? What are the big goals that we can choose for ourselves? This is a metaphor I like. Do you remember this game, Civilization? It was released in 1991. It's had 1 million different releases since then. And the idea was you would be a civilization, and you would start at prehistory with very primitive skills and technologies. And as you go along, every turn you'd get to build things, or improve your cities, or interact with other civilizations. There were a bunch of ways to win. Like, you could win by killing everyone who wasn't on your team, which I think is a terrible way to win at society, actually. Or you could win by building a spaceship, which is much cooler. The whole way through the game, you would research technologies. But you couldn't just like jump ahead and research spaceships. You would have to start earlier on and research, sailing and pottery and the secret and mysterious art of writing things down and so on. And then, you would work through the game, and as you got near the end, you would be able to research space travel. And I haven't played this game in more than a decade, so I don't know what you can research these days. Like, probably near the end, you can research blockchain now, I don't know. But anyway, I always think of the skill tree when people talk about the stuff they want to do. Because a lot of the time, you don't want the stuff you're working on for itself. You want it for something that it unlocks. Like, say you're working on physics. And physics is cool, right? Physics is great. You drop things, they fall down. How fast do they fall down? Let's find out with physics. Woo, it's very exciting. But if you don't already think that's cool, it's very hard to explain. The person who you're asking to fund your project is like, how does that make my life better? And you're like, physics. Like, well, I'm going to fund engineering instead. I don't know, I understand that. Or sanitation, I see the immediate applications of that. Physics. But if you tell them you need to do physics so that you can get steam engines, well, that's a bit more concrete. And if you tell them your actual goal is to build a railroad, that's hard to argue with. Well, if you want to argue with it, if you don't think railroads are cool, you are like an alien to me, but I respect your opinions. You can go and work on something else in this tree, like maybe, I don't know, atomic theory or leadership or something. But the point is, you gotta have a goal. If you want to build a railroad, though, you can't just do physics. You also have to do bridge building. And you also have to do engineering and whatever that is, invention and a bunch of other stuff. If you just do physics, you don't get a win. If your ultimate goal is to build a railroad, you have to have everyone believing that you're building a railroad and doing all of the work necessary to get there. Otherwise, you end up with this whole lot of partially done things. Like you have 70% of a railroad, but you can't go anywhere on trains yet. And you have 40% of metallurgy, but you can't make steel yet. It's like a whole lot of things in flight. You will eventually get to one of them, and presumably to an ice cream party, but you might like to go somewhere now, not in a few years. As an individual or a group, it's really worth sitting down and drawing out your tech tree on a whiteboard and possibly spilling out onto another whiteboard and really choosing a bunch of goals, like understanding where you want to go to. Like not just OKRs or quarterly roadmaps or whatever, but like big long-term destinations. I've sometimes heard this called the North Star or the shining city on the hill. It's like, I mean, it's the sort of thing that you want coming from a whole organization or a whole company. Like ideally, everyone is going to the same place on this. But teams can have a North Star as well. You can pick a time, maybe 2 or 3 years from now, far enough ahead that you can't quite see it from where you are, and write down what you would love your world to look like. Like describe the ideal. Describe what you would want to have, technology-wise or team-wise, if you had nothing right now. Not if you were getting there from where you are, but like what would be perfect? And then write it down and share it really broadly. And people will argue with you, but later we'll talk about why people arguing with you is actually great. And only then, when you have a really solid idea of where you want to go, then think about how to get there. Like, if you start at only looking at where you can get to from where you are, then I think it limits your options. It limits what you can do. So pick the place first, and then you'll pick places that you can't see from where you are. So this sort of thing takes time, but it also saves time. I think it's the difference between, you know, if you've got a bunch of people and they're hungry and you need to go get a restaurant, you have two options. You can say, here's a restaurant, I'll meet you there at 8, or you can all set off together and stop at every corner, and increasingly hungry people are saying, I think this street has good restaurants, but you get there and somebody doesn't like this food, so you try somewhere else, and at every corner you're making these incredibly tightly coupled decisions where you need buy-in from everyone. Much better to pick goals and let people get there, however they get there. This also gives us a ton of autonomy, which it turns out we like. Let's talk about human motivation. If you do a search for motivation on Amazon, you will get like 50,000 books, and I have read none of them. So instead, I opened up the Wikipedia page on motivation, and it was 39 pages long, so I didn't read that either. So instead, I'm going to just tell you the 2 theories of motivation that you already know, because this is the kind of full-service keynoting I'm offering here. In 1943, Abraham Maslow wrote this paper called A Theory of Human Motivation. And he laid out this hierarchy of needs. Like at the bottom, we have physiological needs. We want food and air and broadband internet and so on. And then if we have that, we want to be safe. And if we have that, we want friendship and belonging. And if we have that, we want self-esteem and the esteem of other people. And if we have that, we want self-actualization. So what's self-actualization? Well, in 2009, Daniel Pink built out this self-actualization thing, and he said in work that requires kind of creativity and decision-making, what we actually want is autonomy, mastery, and purpose, where autonomy is, you know, wanting to choose what you do, mastery is the feeling of getting better at something, and purpose is, you know, feeling like you're going towards some sort of a goal. That's what we want. We're self-actualized when we can choose our own work, do it in a way that builds skills, and, you know, go towards some sort of purpose. So there's our destination. We want to get to a goal that we've chosen on our civilization tech tree. Here I'm going to say we're building a railroad. And we want to have autonomy and mastery and purpose as we do it. Now, how do we get there? Well, there's a way that's really attractive and popular, which is that everyone just works on whatever they think is most useful. But however we try to be impartial about it, we will be drawn towards the work that is more interesting and that, you know, has technologies that we might like to try. And it is really hard not to do that. We're drawn towards work that would be fun to do. quite reasonable. I've often heard people call this sort of thing resume-driven development, or I guess CV-driven development, which I think is not actually fair. I think that's too cynical. I call it shiny-driven development. Because I think most of the time, we're not packing our CVs. We are genuinely interested in doing something cool. We're drawn to shiny problems that we can fix. Tech is, our technology is still kind of awful. It's weird. It's both really immature and really legacy at the same time. How did we do that? That's impressive, I think. We're getting better all the time, which is great. Like every day, some objectively better version of something appears. Which means that our best practices have always changed from what you've got right now. So there is always something that you can do. When we look around, there are so many interesting problems to solve. And we want to solve them. I think it's hard for us to avoid them, especially for those of us who came from like sysadmin or ops type backgrounds. A lot of us ended up in SRE. The sort of people who like take disorder and put it into order. And at some point, you don't even do it consciously. You just kind of absent-mindedly tidy things up as you walk past. When we see things we can fix, we just sort of fix them. And I like that about us. We're motivated by making things better. And the industry does encourage it. Performance evaluations often use this word impact. Like, what impact did this person have? What did they do? So everyone wants to do things that will show their impact. The problem is, impact is often defined as what did you do yourself? What did you lead? What did you drive? What was your shining contribution? And I think this is a problem because we work on teams, right? We're supposed to work on teams. In her article, The Origins of Opera and the Future of Programming, Jessica Kerr talks about generative versus productive work. She says that productivity is what one person does by themselves, but generativity is how much better they make everyone else around them. If you make 10 people much better, you clearly have great generative impact. But we don't always reward that the way we reward one big, glorious, productive success. So the pressure is on every individual to show impact and individually do a great thing. And that's how you can end up with a team of 6 people who have 6 projects or 7 projects going at once, because everybody needs to own something and show their leadership and show that they can get things done. So we're externally motivated to follow the shiny track, and we're also kind of internally motivated to follow the shiny track. But it does have a bunch of downsides. One is that we might end up not solving the right problems. We might not be getting closer to our Civ tech tree goal. Like if I have 5 low priority things that I've chosen, and you have 5 high priority things, and we both spend a quarter doing the most important thing, then great, we've done the first and the 6th most important thing. It's like maybe we could have chosen better. And if you have something that's the most important thing on the planet, but it depends on help from me, it can be very hard for us together to get something finished, especially if I'm more interested in a big project that will show my personal impact. And this is how we end up with 70% of a railroad and 50% of metallurgy. Or maybe the thing that I'm doing is duplicating work that I don't know that you're doing, or doing something that your project is about to obsolete. Or maybe the project I've claimed is just too big for one person. Like, you know that thing where you decide to clean out a shed or a wardrobe or something, like 1,000 Marie Kondo memes on the internet make you eventually go, okay, I'll do it. And you start cleaning up, and you pull all the things out, and 3 hours later, you have regrets. And it's much worse than it started. And you really wish you hadn't, but you've run out of steam. And you just wish you hadn't. I think software projects that are chosen for being shiny go like that a lot. We start strong, but after a while, it gets hard to make progress. Like we start hitting a lot of edge cases or people who are resistant. There's something doesn't work, and it's suddenly a lot more difficult and a lot less shiny. And we tell ourselves that we're definitely not giving up. We will definitely come back to it. Just after we take care of this other thing over here, which is a little closer, a little shinier, and we're sure we'll take a shorter time. And we will be back. And maybe we will be back. This is the mystery of the half migration, the Schrodinger's cat migration. Like, is it alive? Is it dead? Is this project still happening? You don't know, and you can't make any decisions based on it. Like, if you want to build a service that integrates with a half-migrated service, you've got to support either the old way and the new way, or you've got to second guess what's going to happen. You can't just make progress. In the meantime, it's like whoever's halfway through this project has taken a lock on it. Like they've claimed it for themselves. Because now it would be much more work for somebody else to go take the project and solve the problem. Because first of all, they have to clean up the huge mess that's left over from the first half project. So it stays half done for a long time. It's like we just added another long-running process to our process table, which is maybe okay. Like teams and organizations can handle a lot of processes, but only if they eventually get closed. Because otherwise what happens is that other processes get blocked waiting on this one. Like maybe they can't make a decision till you make a decision, or they need some resource that you're hogging. Usually the kind of senior people who've been in the company for a long time and who know everything. And so they wait. And then other projects get blocked on them, and other projects get blocked on them. And over time, you get into a weird state where even though it doesn't feel like much is getting finished, everyone is busy and everyone is waiting. The system starts feeling sluggish. It's hard to get things done. Though, I'm describing load here like we're, all processes on a server, and we're more complicated than that. Like we're at least one level of abstraction more complicated than that. I think we're more like a messy distributed system, where we have poor observability, it's kind of hard to debug, and our interdependencies are awful, and a tiny amount of injected latency in one part of the system can cause Byzantine failure modes. That's more like what we are. So anyway, the system gets slow, and all of that intrinsic motivation, well, technically we have autonomy, but small things are so complicated that you don't actually feel like you can do things. There's not a lot of opportunities for building mastery in anything other than pushing through friction and dealing with ambiguity, which are very important skills, but you might want to learn something else as well. And it's hard to believe in a purpose when you're not seeing anyone go anywhere. I think for all that we do it, we know in our hearts that shiny-driven development is bad for us. After years in the industry, I have noticed something that every site reliability engineer writes at performance review time. Maybe this resonates with non-SREs too, I don't know. I need to focus and do fewer things at once. And I'm not mocking, I write this too. I write this every time. It's because there's infinite work. There are always 10 things that we can see that we could start to fix right this minute. And a lot of us are people who have trouble not fixing things that we can see that are broken. So we end up with all these open processes and no sense of accomplishment. We aren't really closer to our goal. Jumping on problems made it feel like we were going faster, but we actually just made everything slower. So what do we do instead? Well, we choose work deliberately. We aim at our goals, and we ignore every single other thing, even broken things. One of my favorite quotes for the last few years is Colin McCarthy's, "Don't do less well, do less well." If you do fewer things, you do them better. So then how do we know which things to do? Well, we ask why we would be doing them. People used to use this model, the 5 whys for debugging systems, and it's kind of been, it doesn't really work so well in the modern era because complex systems are complex and 5 whys is quite linear. But the idea is that you ask why something happened, and then you ask why that happened, and then you ask why that happened, and so on. And even if it's not good for debugging anymore, I really like it for thinking about, how to decide what to work on. So like say someone wants to upgrade some piece of infrastructure, want to upgrade a binary to the newest version. You might ask, that's a reasonable thing to do, but why? And they might say, well, it's got high availability features. If we use this version, we can seamlessly fail it over from one server to another. That seems good. Yeah, but why? We want to be able to shut down a server without a bunch of manual effort. And all of these are reasonable and good things to want, but why? Well, we want to do rolling restarts of our entire fleet. Okay, why do we want those? Well, we want to be able to do kernel upgrades and install server patches every week instead of once a quarter, like we do. Okay, but why? And at each of these steps, it's like you could stop there, but no, let's keep going. Let's see, why do we want to do this? Because, that falls off the edge, but it says, because we have a goal of automating all of our operations. That's our goal. That is the thing we've chosen, and that's why we should do it. Automated fleet management is a goal. That's 5 whys, and sometimes we'll need to keep going for many more. While we do that, if we get to a place that we've already decided we're going, then great. The answer is yes, you should do the thing. If we don't, if we end up with a goal we haven't chosen, then we shouldn't. And then the question is, but what if there's a thing you really want to do? Like, you really want to do it, and it's just not a goal that you have right now, and the answer is, okay, great, but don't. This is something it took me a long time to learn. Just because we can fix something, just because it's possible, and it would be helpful, and it would be a good thing to do, doesn't mean we should do it right now. We can leave some things broken. We can nod at the broken thing every morning like, you are still broken and that will keep bugging me, but I'm not going to fix it today. Starting to fix the thing will feel faster. It will feel more productive. But long term, having a lot of things started just slows us down. We get to it when we get to it. Okay, look, there are exceptions. If there's a small thing, you see broken documentation, fix it. Like there's a small bug, fix it. There's something that'll take a couple of hours and it'll make everyone go faster. Sure, do that with my blessing. Clear traps out of your path. Alternatively, maybe it's a crisis, in which case this is not the time to have principled arguments about what your goals were. If the database was at 90% yesterday and it's at 91% today and it's trending 92% tomorrow, don't say, well, we'll do that after our big project. No, drop everything, go fix the thing. A crisis is different, but do add it to your goals. Don't just try to squeeze it in around the edges. Tell people this is now our priority until you can get back to the thing you want. Or maybe it's something that's not that important, but it would just be really fun. And there's a lot of that. We have kind of fun jobs, I think. And in that case, save it for a time that's designated for fun. Like, I love hack weeks for this. We just had a hack week, and I wrote a bunch of Node.js and on serverless, and it was great fun. And it was in no way the most useful thing I could have done. But it was hack week, and I learned a lot. Some people do 20% time, which I think is also cool. It's good to have designated time to let people fix low-priority things that bug them and to play and to learn. I think that's great. But it needs to be finite, dedicated time. If it's not in one of those three categories, it's in this fourth state. It's something that's genuinely important. And if you do it, it will make things better. But it isn't more important than the thing you've already chosen. And in that case, ignore it. Like, if you have to, write it down, if that'll scratch the itch. If you really have to, dump your early implementation ideas into a Jira ticket or whatever, but make it clear that it's open for other people if they have time, and that they can ignore your ideas if they want. That's important, and it's hard. But if you do the first 5% of a project, you are implicitly claiming it. I've heard this called licking the cookie or licking the project, which I think is so wonderfully disgusting. Like, you don't want this immediately, but you want it later, so you put your germs on it, and then no one else will touch it. As individuals, it's really tempting to claim problems to solve. Like, partly because of impact, partly because it just feels good to solve things, but also because we care about how the thing gets done, you know? And we're worried we won't like how other people do it. But if you see a project you want to do, and you don't have time to do it right now, you have to leave it. As so many inspirational posters in weird gift shops have told us, if you love the project, you have to set it free. Even if you were meant to be together, even if you know that this project and you would be best of all, and even if you know you would do the project better than anything else, you have to let other people do things that you would do better. One of my favorite metaphors of all time is Molly Graham's give away your Legos talk. Molly compares scaling an organization to building a brilliant Lego tower. And you know, you're working on it and it's great. And then other people are joining in. And you have to let them take over building part of the tower. She said it's natural to be anxious that they'll build it wrong, or that they'll take all of the Legos and there'll be no Lego left for you. But she said the only way that you can move on to building bigger and better things is if you let other people join in and if you give away your Lego. This goes double if you're a busy senior person. In Laura Hogan's blog post, Manager Energy Drain, she says the best gift a manager can give their reports is a messy, unscoped project with a bit of a safety net. And I think this applies to non-managers too. Don't start or scope out projects for people. Like, if there's something that needs to be done, I think it is cool to go find someone who would learn from doing it. But don't start it for them. Instead, tell them, here is something messy and difficult, and I will help any way you need. I'll be a safety net, but I'm not going to start it for you. Senior people are the biggest bottleneck in an organization. It's faster to do things yourself. In the short term, it definitely slows you down to help other people. Like, it's so much faster to do things yourself. But in the longer term, you've got somebody else who can go fast as well. And then you go faster. Whatever you decide, write it down. Write down the stuff you're doing. Write down the stuff you're not doing so people don't have to live in the ambiguous world of, have you thought about this thing or not? Write down, we know about it, we're aware of it, someone else can do it if you want. It exists. We do know. Remove ambiguity as much as you can. That's our second thing, which is making decisions and writing them down, which definitely takes longer than not making decisions, and it definitely takes longer than not writing them down, but I promise you that you will make up the time. Here's an analogy. Here's a kind of a stupid analogy that I love. So imagine you've got a bunch of data sources. I've only drawn 2 on the slides, but pretend there's a bunch more. And there are a lot of servers that need information from these data sources. And they're hitting it really hard all the time. And they're all asking for the same data. Now, the databases are under load. Now, you might say, hey, I would put a cache in there. And I would say, yes, but wait, there's more. Because also the network they're crossing to get the information is super lossy. And it's got bad error checking. And it's really unreliable. And if you're thinking, this design has issues, I assure you it gets worse. Because when the servers do get the data, they all need to process it using some sort of CPU-intensive translation function, even though they're all getting the same data. But each of them have different versions of the translation function, based on when they were built or whatever. They're all different versions. And some of the service owners have also rolled their own code to do what they think the translation function should do, and also they're all wrong. And when any of the servers can't get the data from the databases, they ask the other servers, and the servers give them the data that's after it's been processed, and again, that's probably wrong. Oh yeah, and we would like all of these servers to interact smoothly together and come up with roughly the same understanding of the data. Like, would you approve that design doc? If you would, don't tell me, because this is a terrible design. But somehow we're okay with it when it's all humans. We're okay with it when everybody has to talk to the people who have information, run it through their own mental models, which are mostly wrong, and some of which are completely nonsense, then tell each other things based on wrong understandings and not be able to validate their understanding very well. And then we're surprised when we don't all understand the same thing and projects don't work out. Like, what if we made the decisions once and wrote them down? With the best will in the world, we all remember things differently. Like, we don't do it on purpose, but you have a 1-hour meeting and you make a decision. Have you done this? After an hour, there's now a decision, and then everyone leaves with information in their fragile, lossy human brains. I find this so stressful, because they all understand different things. It's like if you told me our data is in one place and we don't back it up. It's like I have the same sort of visceral, like, no, please, make another copy of the data. Write down the decision somewhere. But I think people are scared of writing things down because they're scared of being wrong. But it's better to be wrong than vague. Like, if you think you and someone else have a different mental model of something, the best thing you can do is write down what you think, knowing that you might be wrong. And then show it to them, like, this is what I think. Is this what you think? Because maybe they don't. And then if they disagree, they'll tell you. If engineers think you're wrong, they'll tell you. That is not a problem that we have. We will tell people when they're wrong. But if you hand-wave things, everyone will superimpose their own reality onto what you've written. Any part of the design doc that's not filled in, everybody will mentally fill it in with the way that they think it should be done. Wrong gets corrected. Hand-wavy lasts until you try to integrate your system with someone else's system and discover that you just meant different things and someone just wasted a quarter. The more you spell out your understanding, the more people will notice how it diverges from their understanding. So be really opinionated and really unambiguous. Watch out for words that can be interpreted in different ways. Like, I saw this talk at Lead Developer New York this year. Rod Begbie had a talk where he talked about blur words. He said they're words that imply different things to different people, that sound like you're being concrete, but you're really not. And the example he gave, which I loved, was end of day. If I tell you I'll send you a document by end of day, do you expect it by 5 p.m., or by 8 p.m., or by midnight, or by 8:59 tomorrow morning? And different people have very strong feelings about what is the right answer to that. It's blurry. I think the word should is the same. Like if I say, we should support TLS in the service we're just making, does that mean we will support TLS? Or does that mean we won't, but we're going to feel kind of bad about it? Lots of the time, there are multiple good paths. But the decision doesn't really belong to anyone. And so everyone kind of skirts around it. If there are decisions that no one's making, I think it is fine for random individuals to have a go at making them, which is pretty scary, right? Because you're like, who am I to make this decision? But if no one is making it, just make it. Write something down. Even if you don't really care whether they choose path A or path B, write down, in this world, path A exists, path B exists, we are choosing path A. You can put draft on the top of the doc if you want to be polite about it, and then put it out into the world, you know? And if someone feels strongly about it, they'll tell you. And they'll say, no, we absolutely have to choose path B, and you have now forced them into making a decision. Ship it, we have a decision, great, now we can keep going. This only works, though, if it's okay to be wrong. It needs to be safe to be wrong. It needs to be safe to change your mind. This is one thing you really, really need in your culture. You have to be able to course correct without it being a problem. Otherwise, no one makes decisions or writes anything down. And everyone gets wedged in this whole fog of procrastination and vaguely written design docs in the passive voice and in the passive-aggressive voice, which is worse, and nothing ever gets finished. It needs to be safe. This is our third thing, that you can only do if you slow down. If people don't feel safe, they won't take risks. They won't admit when they're stuck. They won't make decisions, and they won't write anything down. It takes time to be patient with people. It takes time to help people. It's slower. But then later, you have a safe, blameless, awesome team culture, and everyone does better work. So be kind, which, by the way, is different from being nice. Nice is like about your externally visible demeanor. And it's, being polite and smiling at people and making peace and being agreeable. And all of these are great, and I'm not saying don't do it. Be nice when you can. But kind is more than that. I think it's more active. Kind is about being invested in people and figuring out how to help them and thinking about what they need and meeting them where they are. Like, it is nice to say to someone, you did a good job in that meeting. But it is kind to tell them when they didn't and say, look, your answer to that question was a little bit waffly. You didn't convince the VP you needed to convince, but your idea is really good. So come practice your elevator pitch on me as many times as you want, and I'll tell you when you've got something that's convincing. That's kind. Nice brings in cake, and we love them for it. Please, if you're one of the people who brings in cake, keep bringing in cake. But kind goes to your manager and says, this person did great work, do you know about it? Kind is more active. Be both. Be nice as much as possible. I don't know how to move this, but I'm sure it's fine. We have a mouse? Computers are the worst. Be nice as much as possible. Meetings, work, everything go better when people are trying to be agreeable and friendly with each other. But go further than that. Care about people. Be invested in them. Because if people feel safe, they will do better work. And I think everybody has the ability to influence whether people feel safe in the organization, but especially senior people. If you're a senior person, you have so much power to change the level of safety in your team and in your org. All the stuff I said before, that goes double for senior people. You need to unlick more projects, which is still disgusting. You need to make even more decisions. You need to change your mind publicly. You need to course correct. You need to say things that might be wrong. And later you need to very publicly say, oh, hey, I got that wrong. Well, let's do this other thing instead and have it not be a big deal. But even more than that, you need to ask questions so that it's safe to ask questions. You need to admit you don't know things, so it becomes awesome to not know things. You need to learn out loud all the time so that people are used to learning and getting better at things. You need to say when things are good and tell other people when their work is good and tell other people that other people's work is good. When you review RFCs or design documents, you need to not do like this thing that we do as engineers where we point out the 47 tiny nitpicks we don't like, but we forget to say at the top, by the way, this is solid, good work. You need to do a high-level comment. Tell people that you approve of their ideas. Tell them that you're with them as they go along. And you need to be reassuring when people break things. When someone breaks something, you need to say, thank you for telling me that you broke it, and then you need to tell them about a time that you broke something. And if you're senior and you claim you never broke something, you're not senior. And you need to notice when someone's blocked. Even if it's because they're procrastinating, or they find the project too hard, or you think they shouldn't be blocked, or you're annoyed at them, you need to notice that they're blocked and kindly figure out what to do to unblock them. This builds a better culture. We're going to talk more about people being blocked in a moment. If you make everyone safe and supported, they will do better work. You don't have to be a manager for this. This is often considered manager work is making everyone better. I think senior engineers also need to make everyone better. I think the ability to make people better has to be a requirement for senior engineers. Another way of saying that is that senior people should have high generativity. And you might say, but look, I'm senior, but I have all these projects, and I'm very busy, and helping people takes time. That is a wrong optimization. If you make everyone faster, you get where you're going much better, much faster. Again, productivity is what you do yourself. Generativity is how much better you make everyone else. In that article, Jessica Kerr talked about the systems into relationships between people and how they end up with a group that's greater than the sum of their parts. She pointed out that some people have negative generativity, like they're incredibly productive personally, but they make everyone else worse. I'm not going to lie to you, our industry still sucks at rewarding generativity. Like in an ideal world, I think I would say, go help everybody all the time and do that first, but I don't think that is a good way to be successful, right now at least. Make sure your own work is well documented too. Make sure you're getting your own stuff done and that your achievements are well understood, but also help everybody else. If you make a culture where everyone is helping everyone else succeed, it gets easier to get things done. You spend less time being blocked. People write things down. You do better work. And I think it's more fun. I think you have a better time. People, when they work together, they can reach bigger goals. They can pick things that are too hard for single people on the Civ tech tree, and they can finish them. And that's our fourth thing, is finishing things. You really need to slow down to finish things. You know, we do the first 90% of the project, and then there's a whole lot of other stuff that needs to be done, and the last 10% you know is going to take as long as the first 90%, because that's how that works. But it's very hard to finish things. And then that's the moment when things are blocked, where it's hard to do the last thing, where you're going to get distracted by the next shiny project. It's worth being really deliberate about closing things down. And I want to draw a distinction between things being completed and things being finished. Like, it's obviously better if you can get things 100% done and polished. That's ideal. But sometimes priorities do change, or people leave the company, or the problem is discovered to be genuinely too difficult, or it's just not going to happen. And I think at that point you have to admit it. You have to make peace with it. This thing is never going to be done. If we do this thing where the project is still hanging on a year later and you will get back to it, just agree that you won't. It's not going to happen. It's hard to throw away work. I mean, it's sunk cost fallacy, but it's also hard to tell yourself you're not going to ever use a thing that you spent a lot of months working on. But it's better to be decisive, I think, and release the lock and unlick the project and tell people you're as done as you're going to be. Like, if you fail fast and you write a retrospective, I think that's actually a really good way to end something. To say, this is why this didn't work. This is what we learned. But you can only do that if it's safe. You have to have the sort of culture that rewards people publicly walking away from doing things, going fast in the wrong direction. If you're somewhere where it's not safe to cut your losses, projects stay half done. So that's projects that aren't going to be finished. But I think most of the time projects aren't dead. They are alive. They're just not moving. They're in this sort of dormant state where they're blocked and you're not sure why they're blocked. To understand how to get things finished, I think it helps to look at why they get wedged. Let's do that. Like, in theory, projects don't happen because everybody is busy. It's like, we just don't have time to finish this. And in practice, I don't really think that's the case, because most of the time, if you went and polled everybody, not everybody is busy, or they're not busy with things that are that important. It's more likely that you're blocked on single people. The sort of people who've been in the company a long time, or who are just very senior, and who nothing happens unless they're available. These people are single points of failure. And we can get a lot of the way by making them unclaimed projects, by teaching them how to do that, and how to help other people. But there are other reasons projects get not finished. Like, a lot of the time it comes down to procrastination. And I do not in any way mean that pejoratively. I've heard procrastination described as slow terror, but I think it's more like avoidance of pain. I think it's more like, we're not procrastinating because we're lazy. We're procrastinating because we're asking our brains to do something that is too hard. And it's sort of manifesting for us as pain. And we want to do something, but we don't want to do the thing that will hurt. So we fill up our time with other small things instead. Like, if you've got like a big design decision to make and you find yourself doing a lot of tickets or getting a lot of small things done. You can help procrastinating people, though. It's kind to help procrastinating people, even if they're you, especially if they're you. There's two ways, I think, to do this. One is to add accountability for yourself or other people by, setting deadlines and making commitments, and generally making it scarier to not do the thing than do the thing. This is kind of the only way I get anything done. I sign my future self up to present something at a meeting in 2 weeks. So either I show up without the thing, or I figure out how we're going to whatever the design is, I figure out how to do it by then. But there is a kinder way to do it than deadlines. The deadlines do focus the mind. And that's to respect the fact that you're asking your brain to do something hard. If you're trying to schedule a 5 gig process in a brain with 500 megs of free RAM, feeling bad about it is not going to make it any better. You need to increase the RAM, or you need to decrease the size of the project. Like, that's just how that works. We can help ourselves have more RAM by doing whatever it is that our biology needs. For me, I know that if I have 8 hours sleep, I can do anything. And I hate this. I resent the hell out of this because I like staying up late, but it's so highly correlated. I know that if I have something difficult to do and I sleep for 8 hours, it won't be difficult. For me as well, scheduling time to do things in the morning before the day's decision fatigue catches up with me, I know that works for me. Everyone's brains are different, though. Figure out what your biology needs, or ask your coworkers what their biology needs. You need to be kind to yourself as well, not just kind to other people. And figure out how to make more RAM. But sometimes the project is just too hard. Like having more space, there's never going to be enough space. And people always say, oh, just break down the project. Just do that, just break down the project. But sometimes the project is so difficult and hairy that it's hard to even see where to start breaking down the project. Even the idea of thinking about the project enough to figure out where the cracks are that you could break it, even that is too hard. And it becomes easier to not think about it and go do something else. The best solution that I've found is to work as a team. A group of people at a whiteboard, even 2 people at a whiteboard, can solve more than 2 people individually. It's the generativity thing again. There's something really powerful about people realizing that other people also find things difficult. It's like in a generative team, we feel safe getting vulnerable with each other and talking about what we don't understand, what we don't feel comfortable doing, and then we can do more. Being a team as well means that we're bringing a bunch of different skills, which can be really useful, because we can learn from each other. Because we all find different things difficult, right? Like, for example, I think one of the ways that a project often stops is that we've done all of the well-understood parts of it, by which I mean the tech. And all that's left is the messy humans. And not all of us find that easy. You may end up with some people in a team who find humaning easy, but a lot of us don't. In his great presentation at Velocity last year, Michael Bernstein talked about the phenomenon where someone writes a bunch of code, makes a good thing that people will want, and then just stops. And is like, well, it's written, why don't they want it? He said it was like if you're a farmer and you go through a lot of effort to grow some vegetables, and you water them and you weed them and you take care of them for, I don't know how long it takes to grow vegetables, for however long, and then at the end you just stop and you don't harvest them. He said you have to harvest them. You have to take the things and go to the people and explain to them why they want it. He said marketing is more important than coding in software. Building it isn't enough. But when we spec out our projects to, do a migration or to build some internal tools or whatever, a lot of the time, the times we've written in our design documents or on our timelines are for writing the code, for deploying the code. We don't necessarily make tickets for adoption or for talking to the humans. We need to track all of this, the non-technical work, like all of the marketing of the idea, all of the talking. We need tickets for all of the talking. And we need to consider the project not complete until it's done. A previous team I was in said that they celebrated landings, not launches. Like, you don't get to celebrate, you don't get the ice cream party until users are actually happily using the system. If you're doing a migration, you don't get to celebrate when you turn the new thing on. You celebrate when you turn the old thing off, and not before. Some teams have this idea of a definition of done. If it's not monitored, if it's not done, if it's not documented, it's not done. And I think it's worth getting a definition for done in place that includes all of the talking, whatever the talking is for that project. I think a lot of the time, we have a bunch of very well scoped projects, but a lot of stuff falls into the cracks between them, and there's work that's not anyone's job. So that's why I think it's good to be clear on what problem you're solving at the end. Like, if your job here is to build a railroad, your job implicitly is also to figure out how to get the bridge built. Everything that falls into the cracks is also yours. It's not just the well-defined projects that you've already decided to do. It's like you don't just see the projects, you see the negative space between them. And again, the work is talking. My friend Mark says that people are great at recognizing meetings that could have been emails. But they're terrible at recognizing like long email threads that could have been resolved in a 15-minute meeting. And I think this is so true. I've seen this a lot, where the thing that is missing was one person, usually a TPM, because TPMs are geniuses, walking into a situation, all like, okay, what's not done? Why isn't that done? How do we get that done? Okay, now that's done, what's next? And getting everybody talking to each other. And often there's very small changes that need to be made to make things move again. This is a skill that anyone can learn, by the way. I think TPMs are incredibly good at it, but it is completely a learnable skill. I feel like these lists go around every year, like top 10 technologies we're hiring for in 2019 or whatever, you know? And it's like, yeah, machine learning and serverless and whatever else are great, but I'm calling it the number one technology we need to be learning in 2019 that we need to be hiring for is the ability to talk to other people. Because talking to other people is the only way things get finished. Okay, so the project is done. If you've achieved the goal or the railroad or whatever you set out to achieve, it's important now to take time to celebrate it. Like, you've made progress. You reached the city on the hill. It's great. Take the time. Feel good about it. Ice cream party. But then what? What's next? Well, then you need to choose the next thing to do, which means another point on the civilization tag tree, another round of looking at projects and asking, yeah, but why, and deciding what you're going to achieve. And at the same time, the end of a project is a good time to make sure you're still going somewhere you want. You're aiming at some kind of goals that you have. Like, time to ask why for yourself as well. Where are you going? What do you want? Like, when you're looking at the job that you're in right now, let me ask the same yeah, but why exercise. Why are you in this job? Why does this job exist? If it shouldn't, it's good if you figure it out before anyone else does. Why are we even in this career? Is it giving us things we want? Why are we doing any of this? Why are we building these skills? Is technology actually a terrible idea? Should we be making the robots smarter? Really, we shouldn't be investing in this sort of thing. We're going to regret it. Is there a greater purpose in life? Looking out into the vast infiniteness of the universe, does it matter what I do? That was too many whys. You come back a few. It's worth asking why you're in the role you're in. Like, are you there because you're learning a lot? I mean, that's my number one driver most of the time, is that I'm learning. I'm still learning. Is it a stepping stone to a thing you want? And if so, how do you know when it's time to go get that thing? Or are you there because it pays the bills and it lets you pursue some other dream that you have, which is extremely wonderful. Go kick ass at that thing. Or to be clear, if your reason is that you hate where you are, but they're raining gold upon you, that is completely valid. Just know why you're there and choose to be there. The key is that it's deliberate, because then you can start thinking about where you want to be. I'm really not saying you need to figure it all out. Like, I once read this book that I swear this is true. It said, stop here at the end of this page and write down your life goals, and don't turn the page until you've done that. And that was like 15 years ago. And that book is probably still on a shelf 4 apartments ago. But like, in 3 years, in 5 years, what do you want to still be doing? What do you want to be different? What would you choose if you didn't have something now and you could just magically get there? If you look around, is somebody else doing a job that you would like to be doing, but you don't feel like you have the skills yet, so you don't even consider it because you can't see it from where you are? Choose the place you'd like to be first, the shining city on the hill, and only then figure out how to get there. Figure out what projects you would need. Figure out what stuff is in the cracks between the projects that you would need to do. It turns out that every single thing in our industry is a learnable skill. Everything. I used to joke everything except Paxos, and then there was one brief glorious moment where I understood Paxos. I don't now, but I did briefly understand Paxos, so now I can say that everything you need to know, you can learn. But the deal is, once you've chosen, that's not the end, because we're never actually at the end. Maybe we've built a railroad, but now we get to go do something else and go around again, taking the time to deliberately choose what we work on, to write things down, to make a safe, supportive environment for other people, and to finish things and put them away. It is all continuous, after all. The tech will change, the jobs will change, and today's hot technology will become tomorrow's legacy tech. At some point, doing the same thing today that we did yesterday is just not going to work. But the skills that never go away are talking to other humans and learning and creating a supportive environment and deliberately choosing a destination. So continuously give yourself space to think about where you might like to be. And look, here we are at a conference with 2 days ahead of us, and we've disconnected from work. Thank you very much.